Okay, so the recording has started. We're going to have a presentation from Barbara Kentish for about 25 minutes, and then we will have a brief session in breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together for the final 15 minutes and feedback. We'll talk about it when we get to the point when we're going into breakout rooms. For now, I just want to introduce Barbara, who's going to speak on education and address especially the white paper, but other bits of government policy as well. Barbara, as many of you know, was a teacher in West London, a deputy head teacher at Our Lady's in Hackney, and since she retired, was for some years the worker for Westminster Justice and Peace. So I'm looking forward, I'm sure you are, to Barbara's presentation. Barbara, can you take it from here?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Zip. And thank you very much to Kaj for asking me to do this. I felt that maybe it needed a current practitioner rather than me, but Zip assures me that I've got Richard assures me that I've got the relevant qualifications. So I shall do my best. I should say, I'm not going to apologize for it, but I should warn you that there's going to be a lot of text in the PowerPoint I'm going to take you through. And it's one of the things that teachers are told not to do, which is to baffle the kids with page after page of text. But I was asked to talk about a government document, and what is that but text? I've tried to clarify it a bit. So anything in black is from me. Anything in purple is from the government. There's no color significance in that. It's just a brighter color, a bright color that hopefully stands out. Red is from another government document called Inclusive Britain. So there are three colors. Black is me, purple is this government white paper, and red is another government document called Inclusive Britain. So there we are. So starting out then, the white paper is called Opportunity for All, Strong Schools with Great Teachers for Your Child. Now, who doesn't want that? There we go. And as you can see, it was put out on the 28th of March. It's part of the government's levelling up agenda. It was introduced by Nadhim Zahawi, who has suddenly been catapulted into being Chancellor of the Exchequer, and now I can't remember if he's a candidate or not, but that's neither here nor there. It's very optimistic, it's very upbeat in its tone. So they want to level up. It's part of the Conservative levelling up agenda. What I was asked to do was to talk about it today in reference to diversity and particularly anti-racism. And many of us may have a ragbag of grievances or criticisms of schools over the years. So we need to look at these proposals to see whether Nadhim Zahawi in his former role has addressed the problems we or our children have experienced. And as I said, as Richard has flagged up, I have been out of the school system for 15 years, so some remarks may be a bit off the mark. My earlier experience is important, however. Likewise, the voices now rising to the surface that we've heard from the Black Lives Matter movement, as young adults tell us how they experienced the education that teachers like me offered them a decade or two ago. So it's very, very important that we look back and reflect on practice, our own practice, and the practice that we thought maybe at the time was okay and maybe needed further examination, as well as all the things that we knew at the time were wrong. I had expected to find a white paper offering solutions to a curriculum that has a white bias and to the disproportionate effects that the pandemic has had on children from ethnic minority backgrounds, with the extra help needed to redress this. I thought there might be reference to the need for more Black teachers in senior positions, providing more positive role models, and of course, more teaching on anti-racism. A lot of the things that we've discussed in CARG Forum and other over the decades. To my surprise, there's nothing there. While some of the measures will implicitly address some of these issues, nothing is explicit. So I did a bit of Googling and I found that earlier in the month, not the same department, government had issued a document called Inclusive Britain, the government's response to the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. And I know that you and CARG have already covered this in a workshop a few weeks ago. So some of this will be familiar to you already. Now, I looked at the dates and that Inclusive Britain document came out on the 7th of March. Only, 3 weeks before the white paper. So maybe it's a bit much to expect two different departments to have conferred on that document, but you wish they had. And it would have, I think, altered the tone of the white paper with this rather deafening silence. The Inclusive Britain one is, of course, a series of statements of belief and summary of policy, summary of practice that's already there, but also it puts action points in. So as I said before, what comes up in red will be some of the action points in that document. It's broad general statement as inclusion is at the heart of our equality strategy. We strive for a society where no individual is treated differently because they belong to a particular group. And look at the source of that document that you've already seen, the Race and Disparity Unit, Equality Hub, the Cabinet Office, and Kemi Badenoch, as I now know how to say, who is one of the candidates we're now hearing about for leadership. So there are 4 chapters. Chapter 1 is about teaching. Chapter 2 is behavior and curriculum. Chapter 3 is what are we going to do about it? Well, they don't say it like quite as colloquial as that, but it's basically the measures that they're going to put in place. Chapter 4 is about their strategy for clusters of schools. There's an acronym for that, multi-academy something. It'll come back to me. I've dwelt more on the first 3 and less on the last one. I feel less qualified to talk about the last one and about the academy, the whole academy policy. But underlying a lot of this, and they refer to it from time to time, is the fact that they want schools to be working more closely together. And I think it's by 2030, they expect most schools to be either in a cluster or working towards a cluster. So we'll come to that later. Could I just ask at this point if either Gloria or Richard, if you could tell me when I'm halfway through, just flag up when it's half time for me.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll know what to skip. Right, so the government document, the Opportunity for All, tells us, it summarizes what's here already and then says what they plan to do. The government promises well-trained teachers for all by 2030, 500,000 training and development opportunities, teacher starting salaries to be 30,000 by 2023, keep the focus on pupil premiums as the driver for attainment for disadvantaged children, Ofsted inspection of initial teacher training, providers by 2024, and then every 3 years. So that's what is already in the pipeline. This is what they propose. A new scholarship for language graduates and support for more engineers to teach physics. Two shortage subjects that they maybe think that for our economy, we need more language graduates and more physics teachers. A new leading literacy national professional qualification from September 2022. So presumably that's about to leap into action very shortly. A new national professional qualification for early years leadership. Initiatives to attract trainees and recognize high quality teaching qualifications from all over the world. I was astonished at this. Why aren't they talking about more British homegrown Black teachers incentivized to enter the profession? And it's a bit ironic, isn't it, given all the Brexit thing that we've been through, as to how this is all going to happen. Is the Home Office going to be aware of this? Are they going to be allowed in? And it begs far more questions than I can even imagine. But I was astonished to read that. And maybe the profession does need the higher salaries to get more local people in. And, I just highlight that. That's part of the policy. What is not mentioned is what the Inclusive Britain action point states in its section on education: to equip teachers to make ethical decisions and deliver high quality education, the DFE will embed new reforms to transform the training and support teachers and school leaders to receive at every stage of their career. These measures include national rollout of the early career framework and the reformed national professional qualifications from September 2021. So it seems to me there's an opportunity to have said something in the new qualifications we've just read about. Why isn't there more about this training at every stage to make all the ethical decisions, which would include things like anti-racism? So that's missing. Chapter 2, this is the point where I think a lot of us would have quite a lot to say. Delivering high standards of curriculum, behaviour and attendance. By 2030, every child will be taught a broad and ambitious curriculum in a school with high expectations and strong standards of behaviour. I've felt, as I said to someone, it does sound a bit as though that's the headmaster talking, doesn't it? We will have high expectations and strong standards of behaviour, without really explaining how we're going to get there. But never mind, it may come up. The existing policies are, and I know that you're all just as capable of reading as I am, but I just thought, because it's such a whole lot of text, we'll just take it a bit by bit, and maybe that's easier than me sitting here in silence while you read. So, existing policies: establishing the Oak National Academy as an arm's length curriculum body with free resources for teachers. No mention of what links there might be with diverse history, literature, music, etc. And I thought that might be a possible opening for suggested input. That when we do know how this Oak National Academy, which I have to confess is new to me, how would we access that and suggest resources? Working closely with the Education Endowment Foundation and Ofsted to ensure best available evidence and best practice. What is the best practice, I wonder, in relation to diversity and anti-racism? And there will be some out there, but maybe in CARG, you've got the network and experience to look for that and feed it into this, to these bodies. I just need to. It says no change to the national curriculum with GCSEs and A levels remaining in place. And I just wondered, did that mean no adaptation of the curriculum? Can you alter a module here and a section there? That didn't seem very clear. And given that we're all bursting with ideas of how we might modify the curriculum, that would be something to look into. And then, of course, our lovely Inclusive Britain document. I'm saying lovely, there are many gaps there as well, but it's a lot better than the white paper. Action 57. Forgive me, those people who have been through the document already, you maybe highlighted that. To help pupils understand the intertwined nature of British and global history and their own place within it, the DFE will work with history curriculum experts, historians and school leaders to develop a model history curriculum by 2024 that will stand as an exemplar for a knowledge-rich, coherent approach to the teaching of history. The model history curriculum will support high-quality teaching and help teachers and schools develop their own school curriculum fully, using the flexibility and freedom of the History National Curriculum and the breadth and depth of the content it includes. The development of model knowledge-rich curriculums continues the path of reform the government started in 2010. I did look up the website of my own son's old school, which I know Card has been working with, Cardinal Vaughan in West London. And I was pleased to see that they actually put their history curriculum online. And I was quite impressed with the Key Stage 3 curriculum, which seemed quite broad and seemed to take in things like slavery and colonialism and so on, was less open when it got to Key Stage 4 and A levels. So it seems when they say there is a path of reform already started, that does seem to have happened in some places. I've no idea how far it's gone. The thing that
Excuse me, half time, Barbara.
Oh, thank you very much. I better move on a bit. I was just going to say, why are we not also talking about literature and other aspects of the curriculum? But there we go. They also said they were going to do something about Black History Month 2022. That seems amazing. Be great if it did happen. And obviously you'd want 2023 and so on and so forth. Also in this was very important, they were introducing mental health support teams that provide extra capacity for early support of students and advice for school staff. That comes under the NHS, and I picked up a comment from another body, which I'll talk about later, which says that it doesn't pick up the effects of racism on children and how they're supposed to cope with it, and in ways that doesn't produce negative behavior. They also felt that something should come that would be able to be taught through the relationship, sex and health education and the statutory safeguarding guidance. New proposals, a longer working week, a longer school week. I'm figuring out that's to fit in extra tuition. They in the next bit, they talk about tuition, whether it's one-to-one or small groups, is going to play a huge part in the future of statutory education. They're going to revise behaviour, suspension, permanent exclusion guidance. Well, that can't be anything but good. Well, I'm being optimistic, perhaps. They're going to have an NPQ in behaviour and culture for all teachers and leaders. What kind of culture are we talking about here? It's going to be a national behaviour survey to gather stakeholder views on behaviour and well-being in the school. And I'm just hoping that parents will be specifically counted as stakeholders here. An update of sport and music education and new cultural education plan. A new cultural education plan sounds very vague to me. One thing that I saw many times was a new factor that needed to be included in curriculum, and we were told to teach it across the curriculum. So we had literacy across the curriculum, maths across the curriculum, economic awareness across the curriculum, every single thing you could think of across the curriculum. So I just hope it's not as vague as that. So something to watch there. Back to our nice inclusion document. The DFE, in collaboration with the Equality Hub, will work with leading schools, help them create a resource on pupil hairstyles, uniform policy. Will showcase best practice in uniform policy specific to the diversity of acceptable hairstyles in school to avoid unfair treatment of ethnic minority children whose hair type may not be like the majority. And I shared with the office yesterday that my own son, who's well into his 40s now, was expelled 3 times in his year 10 for the wrong hairstyle. And, you know, boys will be boys. They go off and get the hairstyle they want and come back and tell mum it's not their fault. He then got excluded for a more serious thing towards the end of that year. And to me, that was to do with the alienation he experienced. And I'm sure many of you can think of examples like that. They didn't mention here things like wearing the veil. And I wonder in our Catholic schools how that's being dealt with in different parts of the country where we're now admitting Muslim girls. So that would be interesting to think about. What is a serious gap is nothing on causes of exclusion, and we just hope that that's somewhere in the back office being thought about. Black Caribbean students, 6 times exclusion, 6 times higher than those of their white peers. Gypsy, Roma and Traveller, higher rates. 9 Roma children 9 times more likely to be suspended. Mixed race, white and Black Caribbean, more than 4 times. That was the Guardian 2021, so just last year. Girls, Black Caribbean girls permanently excluded, double that of white girls. Gypsy and Roma girls, 4 times higher than the white girls. So where are the measures to address that? That didn't come out at all. Chapter 3, this is what we're going to do about it. Every child who falls behind in English and maths will get the right support to stay on track. Existing policies. There are 6 million tutoring courses. Oh, there will be, sorry, by 2024. Tutoring being a permanent feature of the school system. Now that, I wonder if that goes hand in hand with the longer school day. Many schools are doing after school classes, catch-up classes and so on. This seems to be now going to be built in. Equipping schools to robustly and routinely identify children needing support, including those with special educational needs and disabilities. So that exists already. The new ones, parent pledge, any child falling behind English and maths, parents can receive timely evidence-based support, funded mainly by the pupil premium. What I'm not clever enough to see is where the money is in any new policy. And pupil premium, I'm told, is based mainly on free school meals. So that's there already for those economically disadvantaged. New guidance on providing catch-up support and assessment of children falling behind. Tutoring as a core academic option. Reform of the SEND and children's social care systems. Chapter 4, a stronger and fairer school system. By 2020, all children will benefit from being taught in a family of schools with their school in a strong multi-academy trust. That's what the MAT thing is, multi-academy trust, a family of schools with plans to join or form one. And that is a strong government policy. What are the principles behind it? How will larger units impact students of Black and ethnic minority groups? I simply, I'm not up to that. I really don't know what the impact will be. I looked up academies, which you can all do. I then looked at the policy statement in the white paper, and it's quite an interesting one. Obviously, supporting multi-academy trusts. And I'll bear with me. Teachers and leaders in strong trusts can form communities of practice, sharing evidence-based approaches and benefiting from high-quality professional development to improve outcomes for children. Strong trusts also achieve economies of scale, sharing resources, centralizing functions, ensuring robust financial governance in order to build resilience and save time and money to reinvest into education. As a result of these benefits and more, our best trusts achieve strong educational outcomes, particularly for disadvantaged children. If all children did as well as pupils in a trust performing at the 90th percentile, national performance at Key Stage 2 would be 14 percentage points higher and 19 percentage points higher for disadvantaged pupils. I should say at the beginning of that white paper, there are lots of figures supporting that policy. and people can go and look themselves into the introductory sections of the white paper, but they do provide figures obviously supporting that policy. Right, this very interesting group. I was looking to see what other people were saying about the white paper, and I came across this rather quirkily named group, the Not So Micro group, and they are talking about micro aggressions, racially, well, let's see what it says. They're subtle, daily and unintentional racial slights committed against people of color because they're members of a racialized group. And not so micro means they're actually micro, they're macro aggressions. They're not micro at all. And their take on the white paper was mainly in these recommendations, racial literacy needs to be at the heart of any new teacher training framework. There should be in-house school support for children who've experienced racism and aggression, such as a counsellor with specific training or a peer group. Early interventions can save children from long-term mental health issues. And I thought that was excellent. And in this third section of the white paper, the one where they said what they were going to do about all these things, there seemed to be resources for tutoring, for support, catch up, and also that mental health team, that mental health support, which unfortunately, in one sense, comes in from the NHS. It seems a bit bitty-piecey. Will racism be tackled by the education section or by the NHS? Not clear. If they were to take up the Not So Micro Groups recommendation. And
5 minutes, Barbara.
Thank you. That's great. I'm believe it or not, I'm nearly there. And then relationships, sex and health education can be a vehicle for discussion of racism and mental health, but also it should be done throughout the curriculum, as Kaj has said on several occasions, and as the inclusion document says, although it doesn't highlight it very much. My conclusion to all this is that there are good proposals and a seemingly sizable budget, but for those trying to make diversity work for all schools, no matter what part of the country, it was disappointing that there's a glaring gap between the laudable ambition. Everybody wants everybody to catch, all the children to catch up, and everybody wants levelling up. But they've left a huge section out without addressing inequality, racism, and an old-fashioned curriculum that hasn't really been reformed as we would see fit. The levelling up agenda will simply struggle to succeed. So it does seem, with this hiatus in government at the moment, it might be a good time to get our thoughts together and get something in to start lobbying government on that. I then consulted somebody I thought was a little bit more expert than me, with a bit more recent experience. Sudi Kombakono, known to some of you as the Kaj trustee and a serving teacher in a Tower Hamlets Catholic secondary school. And this is my claim to the link, I actually taught her, which must be 25 years ago. So of course she's good. Sudi wrote to me and said, I agree with your conclusion. It's a lot of style over substance. I think it's even stronger than I was on that. I was being optimistic. Sudi says in a bit more detail, most of these initiatives will not deal with the issue of structural racism. There needs to be a push to encourage minorities across the board to join the profession and to progress within teaching. Schools have to look at the behaviour policies, training, and what is the Black pupil experience within schools. There's a lot, all of us will remember the Child Q terrible incident. Child Q took place at Jack Petchey Academy, a school based in East London with a lot of Black students. They've recently employed a Somali head teacher and are restructuring the school for the workforce to reflect the community the teachers serve. The curriculum is old-fashioned. teachers have been warned that they should not teach critical race theory. Sorry, my screen has become slightly difficult to read. Hold on a second. I just can't move the thing. It's gone somewhere else. Here we are. I'm sorry. Teachers have been warned that they should not teach critical race theory or anything that criticizes the British Empire. People of colour and modern voices are excluded from English literature in favour of Dickens, Shakespeare and the rest. Nothing against those, of course, but there are so many more. The most important time for a child is 0 to 5. And without initiative, oh, I'm sorry, I've lost my screen share. I cannot see it. You probably can and I can't.
No, we can't.
I'm sorry, can you see it?
No.
Right, well, I'm going to stop there anyway. I think you've got the flavour of
Yes.
Sudi's remarks and my take. You've got basically the nucleus of the white paper, what the government's own paper said about inclusion and anti-racism and all the gaps that I felt that there are, plus, as I said, the Sudi Kompakona, the Carge trustee take on it. So that is, I'll stop there. And so much text. Gloria can send you the PowerPoint presentation should you want that. But I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Barbara. We're now going to go into groups. I think there's going to be 3 breakout groups for just 10 minutes. And if each group would choose someone to feed back when we come back, that will make things work better. Gloria, can you put people into groups?
Yeah, just briefly. Please remember your group so that, I mean, your room number in case you can feed back or you have something to report back to when we get back. Also use the chat function. Okay, so please, links or ideas or questions, put them in the chat, please. The other thing is I'm going to put 3 questions just to guide your discussions. You don't have to use that, but we just want to give you those in case it helps to have something to talk or think about while you're in the room. But if you want to go on another, or, in a different direction, that's fine. So I'm going to create that room now. And you have 10 minutes. Sorry for the short time, but we need to come back and have a kind of a general discussion. Okay.
Thank you. Let's try to make the most of our 12 or 13 minutes we have left. Group 1, is there somebody that could give us an idea of how the discussion went in group 1?
Well, I'm going to be a bit of a cheat because I didn't warn him. I'm going to ask Andy just to sum up really. We came from a lot of broad, different angles, and Andy, as a serving head teacher, I think you said, had some sort of way that he thought might work. So we all had the problem, and he came up with some sort of direction. Don't know if you want to jump in, Andy. You're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. I tell you what, how long have we been doing this, all this online stuff? My apologies. So group 1 was a very diverse group. We had comments about the fact that in initial teacher training, for decades, there's been a lack of people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups joining initial teacher training. And so that's something that is just still there. And any initiatives don't seem to have addressed that. We had other comments around the fact that climate change and more pressing issues that need addressing need to be addressed as well. And I was advocating the fact that in over 35 years of being in education and the last 15 years of being a serving head teacher, for me, I think the solution is outside of the scope of the white paper, but it's about addressing the status of the profession. If we look at the high status professions that families want to go into, they are in the lines of your accountants, your doctors, your lawyers. These are the high profile professions, and why isn't teaching in there? And there's a big national conversation around that we as a group agreed was beyond the remit of the white paper or of the group to discuss. But then going forward, I said one solution is to actually consider the fact that education is very much about planting seeds for future growth. And that actually we need to be looking at the content of the curriculum and about making sure we're developing young people that have the skills to work collaboratively, to see things from other points of view. And in simple terms, the fact that, yes, we've had so many pressures on adding things to the curriculum that things are then pushed out to make space. And we need to look at what actually is taught. And are there too many interest groups vying for what is taught and not enough space for us to develop intelligent, thinking, creative people to take us into this future?
Thanks, Andy. Anybody else from that group that wants to briefly contribute something? Okay. Group 2, could someone from your group let us know what went on?
Yeah, sure, Richard. I was delegated just before the door closed. I didn't have any time to refuse, but I'm happy to take on the task, since I was able to listen to a number of my colleagues who had very strong views. And I think it'd be reasonable to say that I wasn't hearing a great deal of confidence in either the white paper or the government, and that a whole range of matters that appears to be addressed in the white paper, but of course, most significantly in this forum, the whole issue of racism and a great deal of suspicion of how the government is handling the whole thing and how they interpret these matters. But it spilled over into things like the lack of provision for special needs. Certainly from somebody like myself who lives in the north of England, the levelling up thing is just almost farcical. Certainly I've got my own particular view of the thing was a white paper that is quite so thin. That's how we describe it. It's so thin that leaves it open to government interpretation too much for my liking. And certainly a great deal of suspicion in my group about the confidence in academies that the government appear to have, and is not borne out by the evidence we have. And it's something, and certainly my experience, it does not have the confidence across the whole profession. I scribbled a few notes. I'm trying to look at them, but there's certainly a great deal of concern about I would suggest the existing deficiencies in the system that are not being addressed by this white paper. I'm more than happy for any of my colleagues to come in and add to what I've said.
Yes, anyone else from group 2 want to follow that?
Yes, I think
I just want to say
we were also concerned at the development of the culture wars, which is being pushed by certain members of the government, 2 of whom have stood for leadership of the Conservative Party, and the way in which the white paper opens up interference in those issues, model curriculums, the outsourcing to this Oak National Academy, the potential for interference in the little freedoms that schools have in relation to curriculum in the current climate of this culture war is, I think, extremely worrying.
Thanks, Chris. Marcella?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, from at least 2 years ago, I've been working with the Diocese of Westminster and Carge to try and encourage training, teacher training, better teacher training that includes things like race, anti-racism or better understanding of racism and structural racism, to have teachers to be in a place where they're more skilled up to deal with things, be aware of the resources they're using, the way they plan, be aware of the students in their room and just who is there, and not just teach it from, if they're a white teacher, a white perspective. We felt that that was lacking. I have been trying, and I am going to say it, I have had no response from my own diocese, none whatsoever. I'm banging on the door of education, I'm banging on the door of the bishop, and I'm having no response. So if anyone can suggest how I can get into there, I would like to know if anyone else is doing this. Thank you.
Well, we don't have time now, but please keep in touch with Carge and keep pestering us about this. Okay, I'm going to move on because of time and ask group 3 whether someone can tell us how the discussion went.
I got asked to do it, Richard, rather unexpectedly.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Having retired over 20 years ago. We had a few technical problems at the beginning, so we didn't have a full time to discuss everything. And we had quite a few people with quite a bit of expertise in the area. But one of the things we brought up was the fact that the minister in charge actually suffered racial discrimination himself when he was at school, and he's spoken about this, and we couldn't understand why it was excluded from the paper. I mean, someone who's actually experienced it, you would have thought would make sure there was something in the paper to address it, and there wasn't. Now, whether they felt the previous paper covered it and therefore they didn't have to cover it or not, I don't know. And a lot of discussion on who actually wrote it. I mean, who are the people that write these things? Are they real experts or just civil servants? Because it did seem to lack real understanding of some of the problems. And it seemed very shallow, quite depressing. I mean, everyone felt fairly depressed. Someone actually missed the first 10 minutes of it. So she said she wasn't quite as depressed as we were, who'd heard it all. But there was a lot of discussion about diversity and racism and the difference between the two as well, which is a little bit tricky. There was someone that actually trained teachers in that area, and it's quite difficult. And racism isn't that straightforward. It's not necessarily white on black. It can be white on white, like with the travellers, and black on black with different ethnic groups. So it's a very, very complicated issue, and needs treating really carefully. And the white paper seems to have got nowhere near it, so depressing. Something so complicated that should be treated so carefully. Anyway.
Thanks, Malcolm. I think there's an underlying kind of approach in government. It's not a unified approach, but that wants to say that racial disparities are due to class and other things, and racism isn't really a big factor. Anyway, we'll come back to all this. For now, anybody else from group 3? Bill.
Sorry, I'm not group 3, I'm group 1, but I just wanted to pick up what Malcolm said about ministers. I read the other day that we've had either 6 ministers in 7 years or 7 ministers in 6 years. I don't think we can blame ministers. I think it's the civil servants who are advising it.
Oh, yeah.
We go back to the national group. Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Okay. Alison, did you want to say something? You're muted. You're muted, Alison.
Thanks. I was on my way to leave the meeting, having left a note in the chat. I'm awfully sorry. Something's starting at 7 o'clock. But of our group meeting, I think Malcolm covered what we were talking about pretty well, and Hannah as well, who had a lot to do with teacher training and things. I'm not teaching at all. I really just expected to be listening, and I'm sorry that two people or two groups in our group didn't talk at all. So we could have been better organized. Do better next time. But I really am leaving now.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think our time is up. Could I just say, we have a number of public policy issues that we're trying to get at least a first step into in these workshops. And for those of you who are specifically interested in education, stay in touch with us. If we don't jump immediately, pester us. And education's been for a long time an important issue in Carge, and it will continue to be. So I think that's all for tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Can I just say a hello to Anne Peacey, because I haven't seen her for ages.
And everyone else
we used to be on NCLA together.
Many years ago. Hello, Malcolm.
Hello.
Can I just highlight the post that Willie's sent around about his network? I think that's really that's a potentially very important network for Carge to feed into.
Thanks. And yes, Willie, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say we're more than happy. We were already, a couple of months ago, we had some good contributions from people like, I think Father Philip Sumner was one of the people who sent me a really good article following one of his presentations. So I think that this looks like a subject that I'd quite like to follow up. In fact, one of the things I'm going to do as a result of this, contact the CES to see if anybody at CES has made a formal response to this white paper on behalf of the Catholic Education Service. But we've got a deadline for our next issue on the 13th of August. So if anybody wants to follow this up, write something about this, send it to that email address, and I'm sure we'll be able to use it.
Okay.
And I'm very happy to become a regular vehicle for Carge issues.
Thanks, Willie. This is the journal Networking, isn't it?
It is Networking Catholic Education Today.
Okay. Okay. That's all for tonight, but let's keep this conversation going. Sorry to cut it off at this point, but best wishes to everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Richard.
Have a good evening.